Guys, Paul here, back with another video. In today's topic, we're talking drone workflow, specifically mine. So we're going to talk in camera settings to get the most out of our drone, and we're going to take that workflow all the way through to Lightroom to bring in all those images together to get us the best possible result no matter what drone we have. Now, it is no secret if you follow me on Instagram that I am a fan of a drone photo. It is one of my favourite avenues of photography in general, especially when you mix that in with landscapes. Just another thing in our arsenal to really just be super creative with. Now, I was hoping for this to be super practical and us be out in a really cool location for me to demonstrate some of these, but
team have advised me to reimpose stage 3 stay-at-home restrictions for a period of 6 weeks.
So, we are not at a beautiful location. Now, before we dive into it, what do we know about drones? They're amazing tools that give us a unique perspective on the world and lets us display our photography in a slightly different manner. Although the cameras are really good and they are constantly getting better and better, they still fall short when it comes to a few different areas. This brings us on to tip number 1, and this is using HDR to improve the dynamic range of our camera. This is basically going to give us the most amount of flexibility in post-production. Basically, so we're not losing any information in our highlights, midtones, or our shadows. We're going to go through camera settings. What we're going to do is we're going to come over to our settings icon on the right hand side, come here to photo, and then we're going to select HDR. What this is going to do is take 3 separate images, one for our highlights, midtones, and shadows that we can then merge together to give this a super high dynamic range image. Before we jump into editing all this together, I want to jump into the second tip, and then we're going to bring it all together in Lightroom. Now, the other issue that we have is that we are stuck in shooting landscape orientation. Now, typically we're going to be using these for Instagram, which favors more of a vertical crop, a 4x5. What we don't want to be doing is cropping into our landscape images. We don't want to give Instagram that power. Some of these drones only have like 12 megapixels, like the Mavic Air, and we don't want to be cutting all that information in and then just using the tiny part of it. So the method we're going to be using for this is stitching our photos together. Before you scream, you're like, Paul, I have no idea how to use Photoshop and how to stitch things together. It looks super complicated. I don't want to do it. Don't worry, I got you. This is basically 3 clicks of a button and we're done. And if you're sitting here wondering, Paul, what the hell is stitching photos? Basically what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 separate images at different angles, and then in Lightroom we can stitch these together to basically change our orientation from a landscape image to, we can basically start shooting in portrait mode. The best method I always found when using the stitching method: zoom up your subject, take your image, rotate the camera slightly further down, take a photo, and then repeat it one more time. So the key point with taking these 3 separate images for the stitching method is to make sure each photo overlaps. So obviously this basically just flips our orientation from shooting landscape to shooting portrait mode, basically allowing us to basically max out all the information that we can get from our sensor. What this is also doing is we're giving a much more high resolution image, which is perfect if you want to print some of these images. So there's a few different sides to it. You can actually get super creative and stitch some really mind-bending photos together, like almost Inception style. I've not actually tried that yet, but we're going to play around with that maybe in the future, maybe in a future video when I'm allowed outside. So those are the 2 practical tips that we can do out in the field to really improve our drone photography, really take it to the next level. So the next part of this workflow is actually combining those 2 together. So when we're out in the field, what we're doing is using HDR and the stitching method to give us basically a really high dynamic range image, a much higher resolution, which we can then kind of flip the orientation to whatever we want. So what I'm going to show you now is my workflow of how to bring all these images into Lightroom, bring them together to give us a really nice image to work with. So guys, if you've imported your images into Lightroom, what we're going to end up with is 9 separate images. For every 3 photos, we're going to have 3 different exposures. So we flick through here, basically got an image for our highlights, midtones, and shadows. So we don't have to jump into any other program. We can do this all in Lightroom. There's no scary stitching method. All we really need to do is, when we're in our develop tab, have our 9 images selected. We're going to right click on them, come up to photo merge, and hit HDR panorama. So once we're in this photo merge tab, what we're going to do is make sure we have perspective selected. For this particular stitching method, this is what we're going to focus on, and this is the projection method that works the best. As you see, it's done a pretty good job of stitching this all together. The only real issue with this is it's got little white bits at the side where it's not got any of the information, but we don't have to worry about that. Now we're going to hit merge. It's going to do its thing, and it's going to bring it all together and give us a separate image to work with in Lightroom. So as you see here, we've got a pretty good image. It's got pretty decent dynamic range, no highlights or that are blown out. We've got all the information there. And that is basically the entire workflow, guys. All we need to do now is really color grade it and crop it for Instagram, and that is basically it. Now, as much as I would love to go into the color grade techniques, that's not what this video is about. We can save that for another one. This is an image I already posted on my Instagram a couple of weeks ago, but once you've edited it, cropped it, and you can end up with something like this. Thank you very much for tuning in this week. I really do appreciate it. I hope it gives you some value. That is my goal for this channel. Pass on whatever information that I have that I find useful, and then pass it on to you guys. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, doing all those YouTube things. Just keep creating, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.